Hello, welcome to another episode of In the Trenches with Gang Green. I'm your host, Bubbs. Today is Tuesday, June 11th. It was day number 1 of New York Jets mandatory minicamp out at One Jets Drive. And it was a very eventful and news-filled day 1 for the New York Jets. We will break it all down here today in episode 314 of the In the Trenches with Gang Green podcast. I thank you as always for joining me. For those tuning in here on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe, setting a goal of 1,000 subscribers by week 1 Jets Niners out west on Monday Night Football. So a lot to break down in today's podcast. We went into the day, day 1 of minicamp, day 1 of the final off-season program of the off-season before this 40-day dead period in the NFL off-season, really the final dead period in the NFL calendar year before training camp begins in late July. And you're thinking to yourself, all right, it was supposed to be 3 days. It's only now 2 days of minicamp today and then tomorrow. And then the Jets will head off into this 40-day dead period and then come out of it, of course, with training camp on the other side. And you're like, all right, let's see what happens with Hassan Reddick. Let's see what happens with his offense, Aaron Rodgers. And all of a sudden, Aaron Rodgers is in there, and we do get news on Hassan Reddick as he wasn't there as well. That was one of the biggest storylines entering this week, was the questions around Hassan Reddick, whether or not he was going to attend mandatory minicamp. He wasn't at media day yesterday, where they did a bunch of media stuff. Players did. They also took their physicals. He wasn't there yesterday, and he wasn't there again today. But Aaron Rodgers was the big surprise. So we'll break it all down. We'll get into it today on episode 314 of the In the Trenches with Gang Green podcast. Before we begin, this podcast is sponsored by Huga House. I've talked about this in the last episode, and definitely want to check out Huga House if you haven't already. Huga House, you can get anything, hats, t-shirts, all that good stuff. And when you're there, use code BUBS, promo code BUBS, for 15% off any purchase at Huga House. If you want to rock some of the merch that Aaron Rodgers wears often, like you could see on the picture here on YouTube or this picture here as well, head down in the description down below. Link in the description down below. Click on that link. It will take you right to the Huga House store online, and you can shop from a wide range of hats, a wide range of t-shirts, and at checkout, use promo code BUBS for 15% off any purchase at Huga House. So super fired up to team up with them. And if you want to grab yourself some Huga House gear and support both me and, of course, Huga House, and get yourself some swag, definitely go check that out in the link in the description down below. Now, let's get into the news today surrounding this New York Jets team. So like I said, you're kind of expecting, all right, nice 2-3 day practice, see what happens. Maybe Hassan Reddick shows up, maybe he doesn't. And then out of the blue, we hear that Aaron Rodgers wasn't there either. Now, this isn't a major concern. I want Jets fans to pump the brakes if any of you are worried, panicking, oh no, Aaron Rodgers isn't there. Let me remind you, it is June 11th. But before we break down the Aaron Rodgers absence, Hassan Reddick's absence, and everything at practice, he was Robert Saleh on Reddick and Rodgers, both not being there in his press conference this afternoon.
Is Hassan Reddick attending minicamp?
No, so we've got 2 inexcused absences. One obviously being Hassan. Spoke to him over the weekend. Appreciate the dialogue. He's in a really good place mentally, working his tail off like we already know, and but he's choosing to sit out this one inexcused. The second one is Aaron. Aaron and I spoke before OTA started. He's been very good in communication. He's been here the entire time. It's inexcused, but he had an event that was very important to him, which he communicated.
Both are
both inexcused. Yes.
So are they getting fined?
They're both subject to the CBA fine schedule.
Okay, so there you can have it. You hear from Robert Saleh there this morning / afternoon, 10, 11, 12, whenever it was, before practice began, discussing Rodgers and Reddick. I want to get into Rodgers first, and then we'll get into Hassan Reddick, because Hassan Reddick's really the bigger story. Now, we'll start with Rodgers. Rodgers is probably going to be the bigger story. It has already been a massive story. You know, you hear the news come out this morning that Rodgers wasn't there, and within 5 minutes, there was multiple NFL people, multiple fans. I mean, tons of people out there saying, oh, I saw a tweet today. It was like, oh, I'm taking the Jets under on the win total. Oh, look, we were all focused on football. Now he's on here. It's like, what? You know, and look, you have to kind of expect that as a New York Jet fan, but the reactions from Aaron Rodgers missing a practice in June when he's attended everything else. And also, a lot of people won't mention this. They won't mention the fact that Rodgers has been to every practice so far, has been to every OTA, has been an awesome leader in the locker room. He has done everything right as a New York Jet. Going back to last season, let's go back to the minute the trade went down. Couple days after the trade went down, he was already out there in some of the offseason workouts that they do. He was present at OTAs. He was present at minicamp. Even end of last year, he worked his way back to be with the team, to practice on scout team at the end of the year, coming off a torn Achilles. Then you go into this season, was there for all of the offseason phase 1, phase 2 stuff. You entered phase 3, which was OTAs, was there for every single 3-week OTA practice. And now he misses one minicamp practice. Yes, it's mandatory. And as Salah mentioned, he will probably face a fine by the CBA. Of course, they have their rules in place. It's an inexcused absence. But the reaction is just unbelievable. And from there are some Jets fans out there too that are reacting like this is the end of the world. It's June 11th. Let's be honest here. In a week from now, in 5 days from now, none of this is going to matter. But especially once week 1 rolls around, nobody's going to talk about, oh, remember that practice Rodgers missed on a Tuesday in June where they didn't have pads on, they're playing in shorts. Remember that? Nobody's going to talk about that. Nobody's going to care. It doesn't matter. So Rodgers has done everything right as a Jet. You could probably say this has been the first thing that he's missed, or the first thing that he hasn't been here for. You know, it would be another story if Rodgers sat out all of OTAs and now isn't showing up to mandatory minicamp. That would be one thing. And another layer to this as well, which is what makes it even more ridiculous for people overreacting, is the Jets knew about this. Salah said, we'll play the clip here in a second, but Salah mentioned that Rodgers notified him before OTAs even began that he would miss this week of minicamp for something that was very important to him. Here's what Salah had to say specifically on Aaron Rodgers.
Robert, are you disappointed at all in Aaron making the decision not to be here?
No, it's, again, selfishly, I want our other guys here all the time. But, when you get to these mandatory things, it's, you make the best decision for yourself. And obviously, selfishly, want all of them here all the time. But he made a decision, and that's what he went with.
Was he here yesterday?
He was here yesterday, so he came through yesterday. He had his physical. He did the multimedia day, or the media day, and all that stuff. So he was, but like I said, he had something that was very important to him, and if it's important to him, it's important to us.
Will he be? He's not going to be back here at all.
No.
So that's more on Rodgers. You know, again, Salah mentioning we'd like everybody to be there. Jets fans, we would all like to see Rodgers out there today. You know, maybe get a couple more clips of him throwing no-look passes to Garrett Wilson. Now, nobody knows why he's missing. It's, Salah said it's an important event, something important to him. As I showed you, Salah mentioned how this was something that he told him at the beginning of OTAs. This isn't, and again, he was there yesterday too. I think some people are forgetting that. Yesterday when they did their media day, he was there. He took a physical. So he was there yesterday. He obviously is not here for this 2-day mandatory minicamp. He's been here for the rest of OTAs. It's fine. No need to panic. No need to be worried. I think it's frustrating for Jets fans because anything that the media, and look, it is what it is. Rodgers is a polarizing figure. Anything that he does, anything that happens with the Jets that is whether it's happening, anything that happens to Rodgers or something that Rodgers does that impacts the Jets or whatever it is, you're going to get a media firestorm. That's what they love to do. The media and Rodgers don't mix well. It's expected. And I don't know why he's out. It's interesting to think about why he is out. I don't know the event. He might be on some sort of ayahuasca or whatever it is retreat, but whatever it is, he'll be back in training camp. It's June. This won't matter once training camp comes around. And some of these people out here saying, oh, let me take the under. Oh, this is day one of minicamp. It's already a disaster at One Jets Drive. What? Like, what? How? I just don't get it. So that's the Rodgers stuff there. We move on now to Hassan Reddick. This is a big story. Nationally, it's not as big of a story as Rodgers, although it should be, because now we've actually entered a stage of, unlike Rodgers where he's missing 2 practices, we have now entered a stage with Hassan Reddick where he has not done anything this offseason with the team, and he's now missing mandatory minicamp, and we have now officially entered a holdout stage. Now, as we mentioned, Rodgers was there yesterday. Unlike Rodgers, Hassan Reddick was not there yesterday due to the media day and all that stuff. So he has pretty much officially missed everything in mandatory minicamp, won't be there either tomorrow, and we've now entered kind of a stage of where he's holding out, waiting for a new deal. This is what Saleh has sat on Hassan Reddick, and then on the back end of this, we'll discuss more.
Are you at all concerned he will be here at the start of camp?
I'm not concerned. I understand that there's I understand everything that's happening, but at the same time, I know when it comes time to play football, like I said before, he's going to be ready to play football.
So that was Saleh on Reddick, basically saying he's not worried about this. He feels something's going to get done. They asked him if he's concerned, once the season rolls around, if he's going to be ready to go, if him missing time is going to hurt, his ramp-up phase in the training camp, and if he's going to be behind, and, then week 1 comes around, he's not going to be fully ready, if he misses training camp, all that stuff. So basically, Saleh is saying there that he is still, he trusts him. He knows he's doing work on his side. He's talked to him, which Saleh mentioned. He talked to him. I believe he said, I think he said maybe this weekend. I forget exactly the exact verbiage, but he already talked to him. He's doing his own work. But you want him there. And look, I've said this many times. I said this in the last episode, and I'm not going to change my tune. I said in the last episode that if Hassan Reddick was not at mandatory minicamp, I wasn't going to panic. So I'm not going to sit here and all of a sudden start panicking. Again, it's June 11th. The New York Jets have time. But we have entered a holdout stage. This is a time where he's holding out. He wants a new deal. And it definitely seems like there is a little bit of not confusion, but maybe shock on the New York Jets side that they traded for Hassan Reddick. It seems like Connor Hughes posted an article earlier today, of course, covers the Jets for SNY. It seems like the New York Jets, when they went out and grabbed Hassan Reddick, they weren't expecting him to want to deal this badly or hold out for a deal. It's almost like the Jets went out and traded for Hassan Reddick, and now they haven't necessarily just traded for Reddick. They got Reddick, but now they've also got a contract situation on their hands. And it feels like, in a way, Philly, that's one of the reasons they looked to get rid of him, because they didn't want to extend him. They didn't want to give him a long-term deal. They kind of wanted to dump the contract burden on the Jets, which the Jets, it seems like, didn't really know that Reddick would want to deal this badly. Because, again, when Reddick came here, if you remember his introductory press conference, they talked about contract. He didn't really say much about how he wanted one that badly. He said that's more of his agent and stuff, but it didn't seem like it would be something where he would hold out for it. Now, I still think something will get done. I think it would be the Jets traded for Reddick. They're not going to have him hold out of games. He's not going to miss training camp. They're going to find a way to get this done. They have to. Otherwise, it would be an awful, awful look for Joe Douglas if they can't get something done. Douglas is going to get something done. What it's going to look like, I'm not sure. Is it going to be maybe a 3-year contract extension that kicks in this season, and then you can get an out after 2, where it's not like an extension where after this year it kicks in, so it's almost like you're giving him a 3-year deal plus this year? Like, if you give him a 3-year extension and you allow it to kick in this year, technically it's only a 2-year deal where we've seen Douglas on other contracts give himself an easy out after 2. You know, Reddick fits the window. That's one of the reasons they went out and got him. He fits the window as a guy that can make an impact right now as one of the elite pass rushers in the game over Bryce Huff, who is more of a long-term thing. But when you talk about the all-in window, Reddick fits it better. So do they go out and, you know, give him a 3-year extension? Let's say 1 year's this year, year 2 is next year. Then you can get an out after that. Maybe Rodgers plays 2 years. Rodgers retires. You can move on from Reddick, and you kind of wipe the slate clean. Reddick's probably only here for a year or 2. But it did seem like the New York Jets thought that they could bring in Hassan Reddick, and it seemed like it seems like he would have came in, played for his played under his current contract, looked to earn a better deal next offseason, and that's kind of how it would be. And this is what it said in the article. Reddick was on board. He had a tremendous visit with the team, sources told SNY, when he showed up to take his physical and finalize the trade from Philadelphia. Additional sources informed SNY that Reddick told members of the team he would be in attendance for the offseason program, including OTAs and minicamp on his current contract. Of course, that has now changed. So whatever it was, what changed, I'm not sure. But something obviously changed. Is that a little concerning? Yeah, it adds a little bit of concern to it that from what seems like he was all set on playing and now all of a sudden, I want a new contract, it kind of throws the Jets a little bit into it kind of puts a lot of urgency under the Jets now where it's like, all right, they weren't expecting this, and now all of a sudden they got a contract situation on their hands that they didn't really know they were getting into. But here we are. I said it. I'm still not concerned. I still think something gets done. I think from the Jets' perspective, from Douglas's perspective, he's not going to make this trade and have Reddick hold out. It would be an awful, awful look for Joe Douglas in a must-win 2025 for him. Or a 2024, rather. So it would be an awful look on Douglas if something doesn't get done. So something's going to get done. Give it time. It's only June. You have a month and a half pretty much. You have about 40 days to figure this out. I think it'll be all right. If training camp rolls around, he's still holding out, and this leaks into August, then you can start to really be worried. But for now, you've got about 2 months until we hit August. They've got time. All right, now on to some more, I guess, positive news as opposed to Reddick not being there. And Reddick, by the way, has still been working on his own, so I'm not really worried. Salah mentioned it, of course, in the clip that we showed you. I'm not really too worried about him coming out slow in camp and needing a ramp-up period. He's doing stuff on his own. I mean, this offseason stuff is so light anyway. It's not, I think missing training camp is more hurtful than missing this. You know, if you're doing stuff on your own and then you come into training camp, I think he's fine. Like, I don't think this is going to affect his play because he missed May and June. Don't think that would happen. Some positive injury updates. AVT and Morgan Moses will both be ready by training camp. So really, really positive. We saw 3/5 of the Jets offensive line out there this afternoon. So that was a really good sign. And you'll obviously get AVT and Moses back in the fold come training camp. Moses coming off the torn pec. AVT, of course, coming off the torn Achilles. Both huge pieces of this offensive line. Your right side of the offensive line will be ready to go. Your right guard in AVT and your right tackle in Morgan Moses. So that's definitely a positive. Brees was out. He won't practice these 2 days. No need to be concerned, Jet fans. I think this is actually probably not a bad thing. You don't want to put any more miles on Brees than you need to. You saw it last year. They kind of took it slow with him coming off his torn ACL recovery. He was perfectly fine. You know, keep him fresh, keep him ready to go. It's not bad either because Salah said if this was game week, he'd be out there. There's a good chance if this was training camp, he'd be out there. But a common theme in this podcast has been it's June 11th. There's no need to push him in June for a non-contact practice that'll mean nothing in about a week. So that's all. And Izzy, too, today got shaken up. It seems like a shoulder. So hopefully everything's okay there. I'm sure we'll probably know more tomorrow because Salah's set to speak again. So hopefully nothing there with Izzy. But I'm sure something will pop up here over the next couple hours. And then tryout guys that were out there this afternoon. We'll get into the 5. Pat Elflein, who actually played with the Jets prior, offensive lineman. They've also brought an offensive lineman, Il Manning, Corey Luciano, another offensive lineman. They also brought in 2 defensive linemen for tryouts, Jeremy Lewis and Tack McKinley. Tack McKinley is a former first-round pick, 2017, of the Atlanta Falcons. And the biggest name of them all, and a guy that I could actually see potentially playing a role, is Jakeem Grant, a wide receiver, but primarily kick return specialist. This isn't the first guy that the New York Jets have brought in that's a kick return specialist. About a week or 2 ago, as we know, they also brought in Tariq Cohen. You've also got Xavier Gibson. They also got some UDFAs that return kicks. The Jets are really bringing in a lot of names to potentially return kicks for this football team. The 2016 6th-round pick in Jakeem Grant spent 6 seasons with the Miami Dolphins and then spent, or about, I should say, 5.5 seasons with the Dolphins. He spent 2016 to 2021, then was dealt to the Chicago Bears, and then played 11 games with them, and then has not played the last 2 years. So little bit similar to, Tariq Cohen, where he's hasn't played since 2020. Jakeem Grant hasn't played since 2021, so it's been out of the league the last 2 years. So we'll see what he's got left. But when he was in his prime, I guess if you want to call that, if you want to call it his prime, very good player from a returning standpoint. In his 11 games he played with the Chicago Bears in 2021, he had 18 punt returns for 250 yards and a touchdown. His longest was 97 yards. He also had 21 kick returns for 493 yards. His most yards he's ever had in a season from a kickoff standpoint was 2019, where he only played 10 games, but he had 578 kickoff return yards, including a touchdown, 101 yards. So the year prior, he had 18 kickoff returns, also only played 10 games, had 535 yards, 1 touchdown. His longest was a 102-yard return. So a guy that in his career has 2 kickoffs for a touchdown, has 4 punt returns for a touchdown, 2,699 kickoff return yards, 1,228 punt return yards. So a guy that's got experience. Tryout. We'll see if he pops onto the training camp roster and maybe plays a role in training camp, maybe impresses and, I don't know, gets out there in a game this season, because the Jets are really kind of attacking this new kickoff rule in a very unique way with a whole lot of bodies that'll get some reps during camp. So that's another name to keep an eye out for. Those are your 6 tryouts. Jakeem Grant's the only one that pops off the list. I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily say the other 5 have much of a chance, but I guess you never know. All right, on to practice. Just some quick practice notes today. Tyrod Taylor was QB1. He was informed this morning that he would take over the QB1 duties, and it wasn't quite an Aaron Rodgers-led practice. A lot of checkdowns from Tyrod, kind of taking what the defense gives him. Not going to sit here and dissect Tyrod's play. That's what a backup quarterback's supposed to do. He's not somebody that's going to push the envelope and throw the ball downfield and take risks. He's checked down, take what the defense gives him, 5 to 8 yards. Keep it simple. Give your defense a chance. In a real game scenario, give your defense a chance. Keep your offense in the game. Don't make the crucial mistakes. And that's kind of what he's done. He knows how to do it. He's been a backup for the majority of his career. That's what he does. That's what he did out there at practice. He had some completions to Garrett Wilson, Tyler Conklin, Xavier Valade, Isaiah Davis. Was 6 for 7 in 7-on-7 drills. So he was good in 7-on-7. Team drills, though, the 11-on-11 was not great. Some of the chemistry stuff was off with the running backs. There was a couple fumbled handoffs. So, look, I'm not going to. It's June. It's Tyrod Taylor. It's the backup quarterback. It is what it is. But kind of what you would expect out of backup. Training camp, it's minicamp, kind of was out there on the fly. Hasn't really worked with many of these guys, but, still had some completions, still did some good things, had some, of course, rough moments, but kind of what you expect. And it was really, with Rodgers out, Jordan Travis out, they were really only running 2 quarterbacks out there, Andrew Peasley and, of course, Tyrod. So a lot of reps to go around for those 2. Some other non-quarterback practice notes. Tyron Smith practiced today, so that was a positive. As we mentioned, 3/5 of the offensive line. 3 of the 5 offensive linemen were out there today. Joe Tittman, who impressed. Tyron Smith and John Simpson. ABT, Morgan Moses, as we know, weren't out there, but they'll be ready for training camp. So the offensive line is really taking shape here from a health perspective, which is a really good sign. Knock on wood, this can continue throughout the summer and really, most importantly, throughout the season. Please pray to the offensive line gods that they can keep us healthy. Xavier Gibson's impressing, looking really good. His route running, from a lot of the beat reporters that were out at practice this afternoon, very impressed with his route running. It seems like he's taking a little bit of a leap here. I think, Gibson's maybe coming into the season with a little bit of motivation, a little bit of fire. The Jets drafted Malachi Corley to kind of fill in that third receiver slot role. They went out and added Tariq Cohen. They went out and added some of these kick returners, punt returners, which was Gibson's role last year. So I think Gibson has come in a little motivated, a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. Not that the Jets are giving up on him, but the Jets have brought in pieces that could potentially put his name deeper on the depth chart. And I think he's come out and responded really well. So Gibson's looked good. And look, this is great. I mean, if Gibson turns into a productive pass catcher and a good route runner, that would be huge for this Jet team, because you look at the way the receiving core is constructed, you really like Garrett Wilson, Mike Williams, and Malachi Corley. But then you have questions about what you can get out of Lazard. You have questions about Jason Brownlee. You didn't see a whole lot of him. And same thing with Gibson. So you hope that if Gibson can continue this and take a jump this season, that'd be huge for like your fourth, fifth receiver to be a weapon like that. And he could do a little bit of everything too. Talk about trick plays as well. He can do that. So good to see Gibson having a successful spring into June here. Tight ends all played pretty well today. Ruckert, Conklin, Yeboah. Really going to be interesting. Like, Conklin's, of course, your number one tight end, but Yeboah's been very impressive through OTAs and in, of course, minicamp. Had a good catch today. I think Yeboah, there's been a little bit of a discussion around the fan base. I think when you look at how the Jets are going to use their tight ends, Conklin's, of course, the number one. But if you're going to run 12, 13 personnel or a 12 personnel, let's say, in a running situation, I think you're probably throwing Ruckert out there. But if you're throwing if you're putting 12 personnel out there for a passing situation, it might be Yeboah. I think Yeboah is probably the better pass catcher, probably the better route runner potentially, from a passing perspective right now than Ruckert. But Ruckert is the better blocker. So it's really going to be interesting. The Jets have three really solid tight ends. Yeboah, Ruckert is depth. Conklin, of course, is your number one. And it's good. It gives the Jets some flexibility on the 12 personnel. One solid blocking, one better pass catching. I think Ruckert too. I still think Ruckert's probably better than Yeboah. But, Yeboah is a guy that's kind of been on the practice squad a lot, been around for a little bit now. Really gets a chance this year to play a little bit of a bigger role than he has in the past. Defensively, Jarek Bernard-Converse had a couple good coverages today. Tack McKinley, I actually think, made a good play. One of their tryout guys. Javon Kinlaw impressed a little bit. He's one of their only defensive linemen starter defensive linemen out there, with, of course, Reddick gone. So a little bit thin. Lecky Fotu also was not out there, dealing a little banged up. So defensive line looked a little different this afternoon, as it has been without Reddick not being there. So those are primarily practice notes and primarily the biggest storylines coming away from day one of mandatory minicamp. I will tell you what, it was a lot more active day than I think many expected. But here we are, 5:33 p.m. Eastern. We put a close on to this podcast, and we get ready for day two tomorrow. Hopefully not as many major national storylines that are going to get fans like me frustrated because of the false narratives that'll be thrown out there about Aaron Rodgers. One more time before we finish. Link in the description down below. Click that link. You'll get to the Huga House store, and you can shop wide range of hats, wide range of t-shirts, and at checkout, use code BUBS for 15% off any purchase. If you want to get some of the swag that Aaron Rodgers wears, you could see him wearing it often. Click the link in the description down below. Use promo code BUBS for 15% off any purchase at Huga House. Help support Huga House, helps get yourself some swag, and of course, help support the podcast as well. So that'll do it for episode 314 of the In the Trenches with Gang Green podcast. As always, make sure to please like and subscribe as we get closer to our goal of 1K by week 1. We'll see you back here tomorrow, recapping day number 2. Until then, JETS, 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 Jets.